Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. And it's time for more Reddit posts about people getting exactly what they deserve. So let's begin. Revenge on Evil Landlord. When I was in university, I'd heard stories about horrible landlords of student housing, but hadn't experienced it myself. Until third year, when it felt like we got 3 years worth of crappy landlords all in one go. It began when I heard noises in the wall behind my bed at night. I brushed it off for a while until I realized that it was an animal in the wall. I told the landlords the next day, and they immediately played dumb, acting as if I was stupid in front of my housemates for suggesting that something could fit inside of a wall. That was the first alarm bell. Why immediately try to embarrass me into dropping it? After explaining that I know what a cavity wall is, she asked if we'd seen anything in the kitchen. Oddly specific. We didn't think about it until later. From then on, her husband dealt with us. We weren't aware that he was our landlord too. A little time passes, still nothing done about the noise in my wall. Not that it was a surprise. I had worked out by then that it was probably something like a mouse, and that it could run through the terrace of the houses. As long as it didn't chew its way through my wall or die in there, I put the whole thing on the back burner. Until we were all sat in the sitting room, and heard a thud in the kitchen. Then squeaking. There was a giant rat in our kitchen. The rat disappeared into a hole in the completely crumbling kitchen wall, and the landlord claimed that we made it up, and that they'd never had a rodent problem. I contacted the previous tenants through Facebooking names I found on letters for them that had been posted to us by mistake. The property had had a rat problem for the last 3 years before we moved in, at least. I set a rat trap and caught one, took photos, and sent them to the landlord to tell him to sort the problem out. He told us that because there was a line in our contract about the landlord not paying for pest control, the contract specified wasp nests, etc. We didn't even think about rats when we signed it, that we'd have to pay the hundreds of pounds to fix it. He'd knowingly written that into our contract so he wouldn't have to pay out, instead of fixing the kitchen wall and the exterior wall where the rats were getting in. We called the council, who sent a pest control team. While on their visit, one of the men took my housemate aside and told her that our landlord is evil and he is known for getting nasty. The pest control team told the landlord that it wasn't our fault that there were rats, it was his. The landlord screamed in my face until he was bright red about how I was a terrible person and was trying to take him down for no reason. One of my housemates had to leave because she was scared. I wasn't. We were in a room full of men who were backing us up. He was only making himself look worse for screaming in my face like that. I'm female and was 22 at the time, about half his size. He threatened to sue us for slander. It isn't slander if it's true, so swing and miss. Now for the revenge. It was written into our contract that we had to be notified 24 hours in advance if anyone needed access to the house, which included viewings. I began my mission: stop any other students from getting stuck in this hellhole. The house was being shown by agents, so it made it fairly easy. I left the rat traps in prominent places, casually explaining why we needed them if asked. And if I felt I was being too subtle, making a fake show of, "Oh gosh, please ignore the rat traps. The landlord said he'd fix the kitchen wall where they get in, but hasn't gotten around to it, so we have to catch them." I was honest about the mold problem in the bathroom. When I found out they were planning on increasing the rent by £100 a month, I made a point of saying something like, "Well, it's just about worth the rent I was paying." I made sure to say his name, so they wouldn't get away with using his wife's name as a front, while his reputation for aggression stayed hidden. The agents never said anything to me directly, and because we had to be notified, I could always make sure I was home when there was a viewing. My housemates fully supported my revenge, but I was the woman of action in the house. When I'm sure I'm in the right, I will do what's necessary to make things right. That was until they tried to turn up unannounced one day, not even knocking, just unlocked our front door and walked in. Luckily, I was in the house, kicked them out for not informing us, and told them that they were in breach of our contract. If the landlord could use it to beat us with, two can play at that game. No new tenants had signed for the house by the time we were free of that hellhole. It's been 2 years now though, so I have no idea what happened to the rat house. Edit to add, I've had a lot of people asking where this was, because they had similar experiences. At the risk of him seeing it and trying to sue me again, it was in Southampton. Apparently there are a lot of similar crappy landlords out there across the UK. Revenge is best served frozen. We don't own a car and live at the end of a cul-de-sac. People use my driveway all the time to turn around. It's not a huge deal to me. A little annoying when they compact the snow and it's harder to shovel, but whatever. One of my neighbors had a ride service come pick up their child every day. The van would park in my spot and begin honking at like 8 a.m. I worked nights at the time. Half the time, he'd be half parked on my grass. I told my neighbor that I don't overly mind my spot being used, but not if he's going to honk like that every morning. And especially not if he's going to drive over what little lawn I have every time. She spoke with him, he ignored it. I spoke with him and he said, "What's your problem, man? It's not like you're using it." To which I repeated that I don't mind him using it if he stays off my grass and doesn't honk every morning. Apparently, suggesting he wait till the kid notices he's there, or God forbid, he drags himself out of the car to knock on the door, was just ridiculous and inhumane of me. So I left a recycle bin at the foot of my driveway. He just ran over it. I called the dispatch for the ride service, and was told they are subcontractors and technically self-employed, but they will pass along the message. I wake up the next day to pounding on my door. Dude is pissed. He says, "How dare you call my boss, you stupid piece of crap? What the F is wrong with you?" And I say, "Well, it's quite simple. You were told not to use my driveway if you were going to drive on my lawn and wake me up every morning. Now get off my doorstep. I'll sue you if I lose my job because of you. You've been warned. Don't trespass on my driveway or property again." Dude storms off in a huff spouting obscenities, etc. So this happened on a Thursday. The kids have a PD the next day, and it's supposed to be one of those delightful Canadian weekends, where it drops to like -40 Celsius. For my American friends, -40 is where Celsius and Fahrenheit meet up, so it's freaking cold. So that night I grabbed one of my more beat up plastic garbage bins, made sure to plug all the holes with a generous amount of duct tape, stuck a sign on it that read, "Private property, driveway not for public use," and proceeded to fill it to the brim with water. Now, before anyone thinks I'm a jerk willing to potentially endanger the other kids in the car, I'd like to point out that my neighbor's kid is the first to be picked up, so it's just him in the car. Cue Monday morning. He sees the garbage can, backs up a bit more, and defiantly charges the garbage can, as if to teach me a lesson. He proceeds to cause some pretty serious damage to the front end of his car. Dude gets out fuming, calls the cops, and comes pounding on my door screaming about how I'm going to buy him a new car and that I'm about to be arrested. The cop says, "So let me make sure I understand the situation. He asked you not to park here if you couldn't refrain from honking, then warned you not to park here and put up a barrier. Now you expect him to be charged and pay for damages you caused yourself to your vehicle in an attempt to destroy his own personal property?" I will never forget the look on his face when the officer said, "Yeah, that's not how this works," and just turned to me and asked if I wanted to pursue charges for him damaging my personal property. I just gave him the most crap-eating grin I could muster and said, "Nah, I think we're good." I then went back inside to enjoy a morning coffee while watching him from my kitchen window as he paced back and forth in the cold waiting for a tow truck, and having to call the company he worked for to explain why they needed to send out another driver to complete his route. No, I never saw him again. Try and force workers into dangerous and life-threatening situations. This will backfire in ways you couldn't imagine. The company I used to work for implemented a new way of paying management commissions and bonuses. It was a money saved, money paid type thing. Every little thing had a bonus attached to it. This month you saved on stationery? Here's $100. Didn't spend any money to repair the store in any way? Here's $500. Normally, this wouldn't affect us, but there were a few categories that were outright dangerous, and unfortunately had the biggest bonuses attached to them. It started with the manager and area manager wanting us to change light panels in the store. There were a few problems with this. The lights were so old that the wiring was faulty and unpredictable. The way the lights were rigged would require you to have training as an electrician to remove the panels and replace the bulbs. Management was hoping that we would undertake the work, saving costs on hiring a professional electrician, and thus receiving a hefty bonus. I outright refused, but a few of my offsiders were roped into it. After one particular incident of a worker receiving a mild shock, we all banded together and said no effing way. A week later, we were emailed a link to a new online training course. The main theme? Warehouse employees were to undertake various maintenance tasks, and the main one, changing lights, light panels, etc. If we didn't complete this training, then we would be unsuitable employees, not meet our hiring requirements, and could possibly be terminated. I set about taking screenshots of everything, including the mandatory tests. It became evident very quickly that I was one of the employees who had refused to complete the training and was confronted by the area manager, who said I had a week to complete the training or I'd be written up with an official warning, and because of the severity of the warning, could face disciplinary action and possible immediate termination. Now, what management didn't count on was anyone sharing this information with outsiders. I put together a nice packet with all the new tests and training that would force warehouse employees to do dangerous tasks, but also copies of the new management bonus structure, where it explicitly had categories that detailed if employees could do in-store repairs and save the company money, they'd receive a hefty bonus. There was even an award for most money saved. I also made sure to include copious amounts of emails and texts, showing that management was violating a lot of health and safety guidelines, especially with the lack of warehouse staff to safely unload and load trucks. And one of the worst things I found was around page 36 of our contracts, which stated that we weren't officially covered to unload transfers in trucks, that the company would need to hire professional contractors to unload, and it was up to us to take over once the goods were safely unloaded. Why? Because the company didn't want to cover us medically if we injured ourselves unloading. An oversight on all our behalves, but shocking nonetheless. I checked in with my best friend who is a lawyer, who helped me navigate any non-disclosure issues and who pointed me in the right direction with sending off this information. Once I had sent everything off, everything went back to normal for a while. Management kept pressuring me into signing off on undertaking dangerous tasks to make their bonuses, and I refused. It all came to a head when the area manager essentially said, "You don't sign off on this next shift, I'll fire you on the spot." I struggled with this a lot, and didn't know what to expect when I got off the bus and made my way to the store the next morning. When I walked in ready for my next shift, the store was essentially deserted. I opened the warehouse, checked the transfer sheets, and then grabbed my water bottle and headed into the store to fill it up. As I was standing by the water filter, the customer service manager came downstairs with this cheeky smile on his face. Apparently, the manager was under close review and was currently in mediation, having to answer for all the corners she had cut to make her bonuses. The best bit, the area manager and general manager were both, quote, fired. Apparently, they were given the choice to resign without any payouts or benefits, or the shareholders and CEO of the company would begin an investigation into these practices. I couldn't believe it. A few hours later, the CEO and CFO arrived and tried to offer me a bonus for speaking up, a formal apology, and a raise if I was to drop the case. I just grabbed my bag and resigned right there on the spot. No way was I dropping anything. I walked out of there with a sense of satisfaction knowing that they'd be investigated, and hopefully taken to task on what they tried to force us to do. From what I saw online and on the company's website, it took a long time for the company to recover. Even to this day, you can see the company has been bought and changed hands over and over. Millions lost, bad publicity, public trust and employee trust gone. All to save a few bucks and reward greedy management. Alright guys, thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Leave a like if you enjoyed and also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. So take care, I'll see you next time.